I had finally seen yoga, my income, go from being I'm surviving and I'm paying my rent every month, which is great, but to all of a sudden having money to invest back into my education.
Welcome back to Full-Time Yoga Teacher Podcast with Reka. I am your host. I hope everyone is having a great day so far listening to this podcast. I am recording this intro from Oakland, California today. I usually live in Long Beach, so I record from my apartment in Long Beach, but today I am recording from an Airbnb in Oakland. The reason why I'm in Oakland is because I am assisting my teacher's 200-hour yoga teacher training. My teacher, Annie Carpenter, is facilitating 200-hour Smart Flow teacher training here, and it actually has been, I think, since 2017 since she led her 200-hour. She's been leading 300-hour teacher training modules quite regularly every year in different parts of the world, but this 200-hour that she's leading here in Oakland is more of a rare occasion, it seems like, so I couldn't miss my chance to come assist her in this teacher training program. I am so grateful to be able to come to Oakland to assist this 200-hour because leading my own 200-hour teacher training is a dream of mine, and to get to that dream, I really feel like I need to assist a teacher training first. I need to be part of teacher training probably multiple times before I can lead my own. And Annie Carpenter is someone that I look up to so much that it's the best teacher training to be able to assist, learn from, observe, to kind of get the feel of it. And every time, this is my second weekend coming to Oakland, and every time I come here, whether it's for assisting like I did 2 weeks ago, or whether I come here for continuing education training, I just feel so full after coming to Oakland. Full meaning my cup is full. I feel so inspired. I feel so ready to teach again. Just being surrounded by other amazing yoga teachers, yoga students who is eager to learn, as well as being near my teacher's energy. It just is such a treat. So I am recording this intro this morning before I go in to assist another full day of teacher training. And I just wanted to share that bit about my life because it's quite exciting. Well, today I have such an amazing conversation with Amy. Amy and I have actually never met before. Amy was introduced to me from Allison, who used to live in LA and now lives in the Southeast Asia, Laos, to teach yoga. So Allison recommended that I interview Amy. This conversation was so heartfelt and also interesting and inspiring to hear her story. I think she has such a unique story to share. Amy is an MSW psychotherapist, a 500-hour yoga medicine therapeutic specialist teacher, and yoga teacher trainer. She worked full-time as a bear event and trauma therapist before transitioning to a full-time yoga teacher and educator. She now combines yoga and mental health interventions to help a super personalized and therapeutic experience for her students. She is the founder of Up Yoga Center, a virtual yoga studio and teacher development school. She offers small therapeutic yoga groups virtually to students all over the world and leads retreat and teacher trainings both in person and online. Amy's classes draw on her knowledge of and experience with functional anatomy, traditional Chinese medicine, mindfulness, and trauma-sensitive techniques. Her background as a clinical therapist allows her to offer a super personalized and therapeutic experience for her students. She's passionate about offering very individualized care and support, as well as cultivating the next generation of yoga teachers. I hope you enjoyed the conversation I had with Amy. It was so fascinating to hear her travel stories and how she ended up where she is now. And there's some part of this conversation I got really teary hearing her story. So you can really sense her passion and her love for yoga and her desire to spread to her community. So I hope you enjoyed this week's episode with Amy, and I'll see you on the other side. All right. Welcome, Amy, to Full-Time Yoga Teacher Podcast. And I'm so excited that you're here with me. And where are you logging in from today?
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I am coming to you from Vang Vieng in Laos.
In Laos. And it is quite early over there for you. So right now it's about 2:40 in the afternoon for me in California. And what time is it for you?
Yeah, so I'm on the 5:45 marker over here. So
Yes.
So quite a different time change, but I am coming to you from the future, and the sun will rise again over here.
That's so true. Well, thank you so much for waking up so early to chat with me. I really appreciate it. I know you're living in Laos now, but where are you from?
So I'm originally from the United States. I was living in the U.S. and working there as a therapist until 2014. Then I moved to Colombia, where I lived until last year. So I did have a yoga studio in Colombia. That's where I became a yoga teacher. And then this year kind of thought I would have like an eat, pray, love year after going through some heartbreak and separation. I closed my brick-and-mortar yoga studio, and in my mind thought I would take a travel yoga year. And this is only my second country, but I've been here for several months, and it's quickly becoming more of a long-term stay.
Wow. Well, even just from that, I have so many questions. I guess I want to go back to where in the United States were you living?
So I'm originally from Connecticut, so from the East Coast.
Okay. And when you lived in the United States, you said you were not yoga teacher yet.
No, I got my master's in social work, in clinical social work, and I was working as a clinician, mostly with children and teenagers. I was doing trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy, rational emotive behavioral therapy, and bereavement counseling for children, teens, and their families. Now, something I am really passionate about, something that spoke to me personally as someone who lost a parent quite young, and however, when in 2013 in Connecticut, I'm sure you remember that there was a school shooting in Sandy Hook, and I was doing trauma-focused CBT at the time with children, and I had a very significant professional burnout. I started to have nightmares. I couldn't keep up with my work. I was losing concentration, and all of these things started to happen. And when I had gone to my supervisors and I had said, I'm really struggling here, their response at that time was like, well, kind of, if you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen kind of thing. And so I thought I would take a professional break. My idea was, I'm going to go back. I'll be a therapist again. And my sister happened to live in Colombia. So I took some time off, but I didn't go straight away. After I left my profession, I was, dog walking. I would organize people's closets. I was kind of doing like whatever I could do to get by. And then I was talking to some other therapist friends, and maybe we should try private practice. Let's look at spaces. Let's go into it. But there was something inside of me that was like, you're not ready. You're not ready to go back. You need more time. And so I called my sister. I said, can I come stay with you? And she owns a restaurant in the Caribbean coast of Colombia. So I went there. I thought, okay, you can go 3 months with no visa. So I went, I was helping her out at the restaurant. And I thought, oh, in those 3 months, I'll open my computer. I'll apply for therapy jobs again back in the States. And I didn't open my computer once in 3 months. I was like happy for the first time. I was feeling really light and free. And so I ended up staying. Now where the yoga comes in, when I had left my career as a social worker, I had always done yoga. I'd always practiced as, something for fun. I wasn't a very serious practitioner, I would say. But when I left in my career in 2013, I was really I would say, emotionally fragile at that point. I recovering from burnout, and I had taken my brother had invited me to a hot yoga class, and I remember just crying and crying and crying during the class, and then all of a sudden laughing because I was crying. I had one of those experiences where it's like all the emotions all at once, and I was kind of hooked on it after that. And so having said all of that, when I moved to Colombia and I started to work with my sister at her restaurant, I was doing volunteer work as well. I did get more serious in my yoga practice there. I had a really nice teacher, and then I had thought, yes, I want to do my 200-hour, something that was really on my mind, but it was pretty out of reach economically for me at the time. And I actually entered a contest and I won my 200-hour yoga teacher training. And yes, and that was with yoga medicine in 2018. I did my 200-hour, and I mean, it's just been a total life-changing experience since then.
Wow. Thank you for sharing all that you kind of condensed many years of your life into that, short snippet, and therapist during that time and working with kids and trauma. And I'm sure it was a very challenging time, but it seems like you followed your heart, that you weren't ready to go back yet. And you wanted to try something else and moving to Colombia. And first of all, I want to know, was it Cartagena? You said it was a Caribbean port?
Santa Marta.
Okay.
Yeah.
Colombia, love Colombia. So I can totally understand why you did not want to leave. And after 3 months, you did not want to open a computer, and you just
Yes.
fell in love with Colombia when I went too. So I think I've been there 3 times and just love Colombia. People are so kind and nice.
Yes.
So amazing that your sister actually works there, live there, and run a restaurant. How did that happen?
So she was traveling. She and my brother were traveling together, and they did a 3-month tour of South America, and they started in Argentina. They had a one-way ticket to Argentina, one-way ticket back from Colombia. And it's just a really funny story because at that time, my brother had worked in Paraguay before, and halfway through their travels, he was like, there's a girl I met when I was there, and I have to go back. There's something saying I have to go back there. And it was kind of a big drama that he left my sister midway through their travels, and he went, well, now that's his wife, and they have 2 children. They have one on the way together, and they've been together they've been married for 12 years. And my sister continued on her own, and the last 10 days of her travel was in Colombia, and she met who is now her partner and the father of her 2 children and her business partner. So it was meant to be. At the time, it can seem like things are falling apart, but they maybe are falling into place in a different way.
So you moved to Santa Marta in Colombia, and you were working at a restaurant, volunteering, and you learned Spanish during this time, or did you already?
Yes. Yeah, I definitely did not speak Spanish when I moved to Colombia. I was like, oh, yes, I took Spanish in high school and in university. I'll be fine. No, I did not speak Spanish. And I will say living somewhere when you're confronted with needing to speak another language, that's definitely the best way to learn. So I did learn when I was there. And also at that time, now the landscape in Santa Marta has changed. It is a lot more, I think, tourist friendly, but at the time there weren't a lot of people who spoke English, so it was like sink or swim. You just gotta jump in and try.
Yeah, and I understand. I moved to United States when I was 13 and I didn't speak any English. So you just survival, you have to learn. You have to learn.
Yes.
So that's the fastest way, the best way to learn, I think.
Yes. Funny though, like it gives you a new appreciation because we're having worked with children and seeing young children who like get so angry and they just want to throw something, and it's because they have something to communicate and they don't have the language or they don't have the capacity to communicate it. And I felt at that sometimes. I felt like I wanted to like scream like, I just want to communicate. I just want to say what I'm trying to say. So it gave me a new perspective for sure.
Yeah. So, okay, what year was it that you moved to Colombia?
So I moved to Colombia in the beginning of 2015.
Okay. And then
And
won a teacher training. How
yes,
amazing. And how did you win a teacher training? Was it an online teacher training? Was it in person?
it was in person. It was on an Instagram contest. It's, yeah, it is incredible. So those things are real. Real people do win them.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. I mean, it was with the 200-hour with yoga medicine, and the training was in Spain. For me at that time, financially to go was, I'm living in Colombia. It's a devalued economic system. So it was very challenging. It was a lot of work for me I just had to pay the plane tickets to get there. But I am telling you, it opened up a new opportunity for me when I think also having won this opportunity, I took it so seriously because this was my chance, to make something different of myself. When I had left the States in burnout, I really felt so unworthy at that time. I felt like a failure, like this was supposed to be my career and it didn't pan out how I thought it would work. And then, you go, and when in Colombia, normal, you're making maybe, so at that time, minimum wage was like probably $10 a day. And you live in that economy and you're fine. But to pay $3,000 for a teacher training was obviously not something that was in my reach at that time. So it was really life-changing. Mm-hmm. I'm so grateful that I had that opportunity. And so having said that, when I came back from my training, I really took it seriously. In yoga medicine, in their 200-hour, they had like mini groups where you would have one teacher who was sort of like the head of your mini group. And my teacher, Rachel Land, she was so gracious with me. She gave me such good advice. She kind of said, say yes to everything until you can say no. And I did that. I said yes to every yoga job. I will tell you, I did it all. There were a lot of times in the beginning of my career as a yoga teacher where in Colombia as well, yoga's at that time was pretty new. It was pretty like niche. It wasn't quite as popular. So a lot of times I would go to the studio. For my class, 0 students would show up. But I'm telling you, there was never a time I felt bad about that. I was like, yes, this is fine. I swept the floor. I cleaned energetically. I had this space and no one came. Okay, that's fine. I'm planting the seeds and these seeds are going to flourish in another moment. And I just had that attitude about my yoga career, and it really paid off.
Yeah, it seems like there was that inner knowing, there was that intuition, the deep inside, you knew that keep planting these seeds now. I keep planting it now, and
Yes.
something will come from it, and that's beautiful. I'm curious, when you said you were taking yoga classes in Colombia before you did your 200 hours, was it in Spanish?
Yes.
Spanish. So, okay. So you were able to start learning that way too, taking yoga classes in Spanish.
Yes. Which is which is amazing. So I do teach in Spanish,
Mm-hmm.
not as much anymore, now that I don't live in Colombia anymore, but
Mm-hmm.
there's also a language of movement. Now teaching in Lao, I teach at a place right now where English is the second or third language of most of the students. So we have students come from all over the world. It's a very touristy destination. So there is a language of yoga, not just Sanskrit. There's a language of you walk into this space and you are connecting on all these different physical, spiritual, and mental levels, that it's okay if you don't understand every word that is spoken 100% as well. And that's something I think beautiful about the practice.
Yeah, definitely. So when you started teaching in Colombia, you said yes to all the opportunities. And I feel like that's definitely what I did as well. And that's the advice I give to newer teachers, like just say yes to everything, try it out, even if it's a time slot that's not ideal for you, or even if it's a class that you don't know if you want to teach, because I think that's how we find out what we want to teach or what we're good at teaching, what really lights us up versus like, I think I want to stick to teaching older adults versus young children. Like, I feel like we don't know until we try. So that's definitely my first few years where I said yes to everything really made me realize what I want to keep pursuing as a yoga teacher, and what wasn't.
Totally. The 200 hour is like opening a door, right? And all of a sudden you open the door and there's a hallway full of a million doors. And you're like, oh my gosh, I thought I was opening the door to my career. But then you're like, yoga is just such an incredibly vast world. And so you have to try it all, and you have to keep studying. I guess that is what I think was also, something that I have continued to keep as part of my practice, is to never stop being a student. We're students and teachers for life. And so, in the beginning of my career, I was a lot more interested in the physical piece. I think it was very cool to be able to achieve these maybe more advanced asana. It was very cool to see my muscles grow and to feel very strong in my body. And oh my gosh. And if like you could see my practice now I'm like, I'm just going to lie over this bolster for the next 45 minutes. It's so funny how it changes.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like longer we practice, we kind of all go through that phases. Like in the beginning, we like this physical, vigorous practice, and then slowly we start to get more and more attracted to this subtle, slower pace, more simple movements rather than big, dynamic, unique movement. Which there's place for all, but definitely, I speak to teachers and teacher friends that I have, and even my teachers, I see them go through different phases and kind of all ending up towards like slower practice as they.
Totally.
And I want to know, so you became a studio owner in Colombia. So I want to hear about that. How did you go from teaching as many classes as possible as a new teacher to becoming a studio owner?
Well, I will say I was a lucky few that during the pandemic, things worked very well for me, as I had all of a sudden access virtually to so many students around the world, where I had not had that opportunity. I think when I was teaching earlier in my career, I was I was teaching private classes. I was doing yoga domicilio, so delivery yoga. I was working in studios, but I had my private business in Colombia as well, where I would deliver yoga to people's homes or hotels or wherever. And basically, when the pandemic happened and everything closed, it was a time when I reconnected with students who had taken classes with me even years before, but maybe had followed me on social media. And I just put out in the beginning of the pandemic that I was looking for to get some yoga groups together. And it was incredible. I was teaching during the pandemic. I was teaching 5 classes a day.
Wow.
So it was at that point also, so that was a few years into me being a yoga teacher, I had finally seen yoga, my income go from being I'm surviving and I'm paying my rent every month, which is great, but to all of a sudden having money to invest back into my education. It was an incredible time of my life, which I know how selfish of me because I know the pandemic was so difficult for so many people. This was just my unique experience that I was able to actually have an income source that was not available to me before. I still have students to this day who found me during the pandemic, during March 2020, who are still take classes with me 2 or 3 times a week. So imagine that would never have been possible.
Yeah. And I love hearing that story of yoga teacher kind of taking charge, I guess, during the pandemic of going online, start teaching. And what I have seen and also experienced during the pandemic is for me too, I started teaching online during the pandemic. And I know it was a difficult time for many. What I thought was so amazing is that the power went back to teachers because now teachers could offer this online classes and students can go to their favorite teachers and pay directly to teachers, and teachers will keep and make the 100% of the profit, except for, maybe a cost of Zoom or a cost of your laptop or Wi-Fi, all those things too. But
Yeah.
where in the past, teachers mostly relied on studios or gyms or other organization to get hired and get paid from them. But now I feel like with pandemic, a lot of teachers moving online brought power back to teachers, which I think
Totally. I even looking at a studio where I had worked in Colombia, and they reduced their teacher pay during the pandemic as well for doing virtual classes for their studio. And it was like, I want to say it was like $1, $2, something like that on however many students showed up. They just paid for the hour. And it was so insulting. The yoga teachers invest so much time, so much energy, so much of their hearts into their yoga practice. And just like as a social workers are incredibly underpaid in the United States, and then also blamed for like the fact that we don't have enough mental health care available, but it's just setting up for burnout if we work that way. So yes, I do feel incredibly lucky.
Yeah. And what made you be like, I'm going online? Because I feel like there was a lot of hesitancy I saw during that time from yoga teachers. Some people kind of did not want to teach online, or maybe thought that they'll wait it out. I thought I'll wait it out. I didn't start teaching right away. I maybe waited 6 months or 4 to 6 months before I started teaching online. What drove you to, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to like do it myself.
Yeah, I think I had a good support system as well. I had teachers and students who believed in me and who were pushing me in that direction. Like, yes, you can do it. So I feel very lucky because I didn't have anyone saying, oh, why would you do that? It was quite the opposite. People in my corner were like, of course, do it, and even my students, I had a handful of students and they all recommended their friends, and it was like voice to voice. That is how my studio grew. So yes, definitely had some cheerleaders in my corner.
Yeah. And I have another question, but going back a little bit, when you first became a yoga teacher or decided to pursue becoming a teacher before the pandemic, did you ever hear any of your family member or friends kind of not believing in you or doubting you for pursuing this path?
I will say absolutely not. I had the most supportive friends and family. I think after my friends and family saw burnout that I had experienced, oh my gosh, I had just had all the support in the world. Like, oh, you have a spark in you again. Like you have a passion in you again. Go for it. How cool. And that has been so nice. I think I'm very fortunate. I haven't had any doubters, but I think it's you can cultivate that as well in your life. If you have a lot of people around you who maybe are having other kinds of messages, it might be time to reorganize and find those people who really do believe in you and who are giving you those positive messages, because they're out there. There are people out there who want the best for you.
Yes, for sure. And I love that your family and friends were 100% supportive, encouraging. And okay,
Yeah.
go back to brick and mortar studio that you
Yes.
in Colombia. How did that happen?
So so in 2020 we had a lockdown. So I had moved from the Caribbean coast to the coffee region, the Eje Cafetero. So I was living in a small town called Montenegro Quindío. Like, I'm telling you, this town is like not on any sort of map. It is a very small traditional town. And I was teaching in my mother-in-law's home, and it was so gracious that everyone in that house had allowed me a space to teach. But you can imagine a little stress as far as like, okay, can everyone please be quiet between these hours because I'm teaching class here, and sorry to my partner, but can you please not come in this room during these hours because I'm teaching? And so I said, okay, I just need a place outside of the house. Once I had a little bit of money, I needed a place to teach that was outside of the home. Mm-hmm. So that is how everything started. I rented a room from a hotel. That was my first yoga studio. The hotel industry had really been hit, of course, during COVID. And so I think they were looking for a little extra income. So actually the whole hotel owner was my yoga student as well. And he, I was his first yoga teacher, and he fell in love with yoga. He was a hotel owner, but he also had a desk job and had really suffered from low back pain for years, and started to study with me and was like also my biggest fan. So sweet. He gave me this opportunity to have this space and recommended people. So that was my first studio. It was just that one room. And
so in that one room, you rented out, but you were teaching both virtual online classes, and you started teaching in person there?
In person. Yeah. And then from there, my ex-partner and I opened a studio so we lived there. It was half of a house and half of a studio, and beautiful studio. And that was in Armenia, Quindío. And that was really more in-person classes, although I had always maintained my virtual classes as well.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And was your virtual students mostly Colombian? Did you have a lot from United States? What was your mixture of students from?
So mostly from the United States, okay. Some from the UK, some from Colombia.
Okay. How did most of the United States student come to you when it seems like your teacher training or teaching journey started in Colombia?
Oh my gosh, was this all I was blessed with this one student. Her name is Uhe. She is from Colombia, but she lives in the US right now. She's teaching abroad, but she would always vacation in Santa Marta, and I would be her teacher during her vacations. Anyways, when she saw that I was teaching online, she recommended a friend to take my classes, who recommended another friend, who recommended another friend. It just took one student. It took one student in the US, and I built my studio off of that.
That's amazing.
It is incredible.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. I also don't believe it. I can't believe it. And then, and then just putting the word out. I also have two students now who are the parents of a friend of mine, and you never know. You just put it out there to everyone. It's a lot of the times people who you would not even expect. It's, I think with growing businesses, it might not even be like your closest allies and friends who are the ones who help grow your business. It is that person that crossed your path at one point who maybe you didn't even realize that you had an impact on or that had a connection with, and that is like your biggest cheerleader in the end. So it's very, very cool.
I love that. I love that here, the story of, it's word of mouth. Word of mouth is such a huge part of marketing. And also, I think you should give credit to yourself that you are also probably amazing, great teacher that people want to keep referring you and sharing everybody else in their life about this amazing yoga class that they took from this amazing teacher who lives in Colombia. You are amazing too as a teacher too. Yeah, all of that.
Thank you.
Okay, so with the yoga studio, so you rented a place that was your home and a studio.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that was a very beautiful time in life. I love that place so much. Now, while that was what I consider to be a success, at that point, my marriage came to a very abrupt and surprising end. At that point, I closed my studio. I referred my in-person students to other teachers in the area, and I even closed my virtual studio at that time. And I needed time to recover from that. And so my virtual students, again, when I felt strong enough, when I felt like I could be on my own 2 feet again, they came back to me, and so incredible. I'm telling you, I had one of my students, she bought, I usually sell packs in my own studio of 10 class packs, and when they're done, people just renew. I had one student buy 50 classes up front. When I told her I was closing my studio, I'm like almost going to cry talking about this, because she said, you have to come back and you have to be my teacher, and I'll wait. And it was just so touching that I just had these people really in my corner who believed in me and knew I was going through a hard time, but, offered me that graciousness in that space to do my own healing and come back. So nice.
Yeah. Oh, that.
Yeah.
Tear to my eyes.
Yeah.
And how long was your break before you decided to come back?
So I would say it took about 2 months. Yeah. Maybe about 2 months where, I couldn't even like get on my own mat at that time. It was just it was like, it happened so drastically from one day to the next, when my partner left, that it was like, I mean, we had vacation planned, we had plane tickets, we had all of these things. And it was like almost like a hurricane swept through my life and like washed my home away. And I was like left holding onto a tree, like what just happened? And so I really became ungrounded at that time, but I was able to, I moved back to Santa Marta for a few months at that time, and had the space thanks to another yoga student as well. I'm telling you, I've been blessed with the best students in the world who had offered me a space to stay in a vacation home she owns, and was able to really get back on my feet and get healthy again. I had lost a lot of weight. I had lost the ability to sleep, all of these things that can happen in acute grief. And, I'm still obviously on that healing journey. This was just in the beginning in February of 2023. And so, so when I closed my studio, I think my students were all very understanding. My in-person students also very kind, although I was not able to take them with me, were just very gracious with me as well. And so at that time, I will say in my sort of recovery in this grief period, was kind of like spending a lot of time on YouTube because I couldn't really like handle being in silence at that time. And all of a sudden, all of these like travel blogs came into my algorithm, and something was saying like, just go to Thailand. It was Thailand in particular kept coming up. And So I started to look for jobs on Yoga Trade, and I paid the subscription.
Explain what Yoga Trade is for people who don't know what it is.
So Yoga Trade is a website that does require a membership. I want to say it's about $50 a year, where you can look at short-term yoga jobs around the world. So some of them are paid, many of them are volunteer, but it is a great way to travel and teach. So I found this job on Yoga Trade it was a work exchange. So it was at a Muay Thai and yoga center in Thailand. So teaching a few classes a day in exchange for room and board. And I thought, you know what, that will get me to Asia, and like that, I just need to go. And so that's how I started. And once I was there, I saw this other job where I'm working now in Laos. This is, I found on Yoga Trade as well. This is a paid job. The yoga studio is in a very touristy town. So we don't get a lot of repeat students in the studio I'm in right now, which is a different way than to teach. This is, obviously during the pandemic, I've been with the same students, which I love, but all aspects of teaching have really been bright spots in my life. So it is very cool as well to have students who maybe you meet one time, but you have an opportunity to have an impact on them as well. So it's very different than my day-to-day, but I do have the ability to have my online business while I'm teaching here as well.
Yeah. So I'm curious, before getting more into your life now, you were first in Thailand, and how long were you there, and what made you decide that you were ready to move on or look for something else, or move to another country again?
So I had the contract in Thailand was for 2 months, and it was perfect. It was enough. I will say one thing about Yoga Trade is that because a lot of the opportunities are volunteer, you will see that the majority of teachers are newer teachers, which is great. It's you do your 200-hour and you're looking for those practice hours of being a teacher and getting your voice and getting confident. So when I went to this retreat center, I did feel that I have evolved to a point in my teaching where I want my students to be students who are very interested in yoga. Okay, so at this retreat center, yoga was kind of like the secondary thing. People would go for the Muay Thai, and then it was like, oh, we have yoga. And so I felt a little undervalued. I think it was kind of like, this is just an extra benefit that we offer. But I did, and that's not to say I had some students there who, oh gosh, I'm still in contact with, who are so gracious and who even have said they want to do their 200-hour teaching now. They've been very inspired to fall in love with yoga. But I will say that there was a tough piece to it, because you're also in a space that's not really for you. It's more for Muay Thai. And so maybe people who come late to class, or, kind of don't take it seriously, who are maybe made me feel a little undervalued. And I don't feel like I'm in that point in my life. I'm very confident in myself as a teacher. I feel like what I offer is so valuable that I want to attract students who see the value in what I offer.
Yeah. So that brought you to search for another job on Yoga Trade, or how did you find it?
So I was still at that time, I think I found this job right as soon as I got to Thailand, because I was thinking, oh yeah, I'm just going to travel this year and I'm going to go all over. And what I did like on their description of this job was that they were looking for more experienced yoga teachers. The owner of the studio has been a yogi for 20 years. She really believes in the yoga practice. And so I did already feel from the description that this was a special space that does value the practice of yoga. And so having said that, I've seen some other job offerings on Yoga Trade that are similar, that are places that where they do really respect yoga, but you will also see some that are like, oh, we have, this party hostel and we want to offer yoga to our guests. So like you can stay in a dorm room and teach a morning class in exchange for, room and board. And I think I'm just not at that place in my life. Not to say that that's bad. I think there's a room for everything, but again, as you begin to teach, you begin to see what is your space and what is not for you. And that's perfectly fine.
Totally. Even traveling, I feel like when I was younger, dorm room, bunk beds were totally fun.
Yeah.
Loved it. It was fun. But I feel like now, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I've done it many years and I still have so much great memory from that time. But I feel like right now, I think I want my own room.
Yes.
Similar to that with teaching job, you know your worth, and you also want what's right place, right? You want to work at a place that's right for you and you're valued.
Yes.
So you moved to Laos after 2 months. You were in Thailand for 2 months.
Yes, and so I've been here since September. So it's now 4 months I've been here, and I see opportunity here, to be honest. I feel that I have people here who really believe in me. I have the support system of the owner of the studio sees value in what I'm offering. And I have time as well where I teach my online classes. I teach my in-person classes, and I have time where since I've been here, I've been able to do a lot of work on the teacher training end, where I've been wanting to create these manuals for very specific continuing education programs, but I haven't had the luxury of time and space to be able to do that because, this is when you are creating something, that's unpaid time. I'm not getting paid to sit in a coffee shop and write a training manual. This is like on my time. So here, the cost of living is low. I obviously very privileged that I have that capacity, because in the United States, I would have had to work many more classes a week to be able to just, pay my rent. So here I have that spaciousness, which is very nice. I've also sort of rebranded my virtual studio since I've been here. Since moving to Thailand, I will even say I had been studying Buddhism with Geshe Michael Roach through Asian Classics Institute during the pandemic. And, he is someone who is at an arm's length distance away. So yes, his teachings are so powerful, but he also says, find your teacher. And also, I've done most of my studies with yoga medicine, with Tiffany Cruikshank, and she's so knowledgeable, and everyone in yoga medicine is so knowledgeable and so powerful, such amazing, inspiring teachers, but they're also at a bit of an arm's length distance away. And so I had kept hearing this, find your teacher. And I'm like, I have all of these teachers. I love my teachers. But the time came where I said, no, like I need to have my mentor, I'm ready for that. And I think maybe earlier in my career, I of course have had teachers who, like Rachel Land, for example, who have been there for me for many years, have answered questions or have given me words of advice, but it was time for me to find someone more consistently. So I did make that decision to begin as a mentee, a program. So this is one 1,000-hour program that I'm currently into 1,000-hour programs. And so this one is with Carolyn Wybar. She is also, she does teach with yoga medicine. That's how I found her. But I had been in class with her as well. And I had always admired the way that she, in teacher training programs, I had admired the questions she asked. I had admired the way she conceptualized things. And I reached out to her, and she's been teaching for many years, and asked her if she offered mentorships. And she invited me to join into this 1,000-hour program. So I will say that has been very helpful in me to rearrange my business, which is something I've been wanting to do for a long time. I felt like I was ready. I have been ready to now combine the mental health piece with the yoga piece in a more concrete way. It is something I felt like throughout my career as a yoga teacher I've woven through, but not as concretely as I am doing now, which is very specific 8-week therapeutic programs based off of Chinese medicine, based off of 5-element theory, which has kind of a specific goals of things that we want to work on, these sort of internal goals towards balance in our own lives. So that has been really incredible. And I'm just so grateful for all my teachers and my mentor and for the guidance I've had along the way.
Yeah. Amazing about everything you said. Now you said feel like you have time to work on these things, create these manuals, create these programs that it's been marinating inside of you for probably many years, but now you have the time and space to create it. Number one, I resonate with that because living and working as a full-time yoga teacher in LA, I feel like I never have time. I'm always teaching. I'm always teaching from one place to the next, trying to
Yes.
run my business both in person and in virtual. And it's just like, I barely have time to like really sit, build business or build something, the plans that's been like ideas that's been in my head, because I'm just too busy working all the time. So that's something Ali also have mentioned in that interview that we did of how she made such a beautiful analogy of like in LA, a lot of us are living like we're this like spiritual, beautiful being, drinking green juices and going to kirtan but then like we're also living a life that's so far away from that. We're like sitting in traffic. We're so frustrated. Everybody's so stressed out. We all have autoimmune issues, like all this issue that's related to stress and how there's such a like it's not lining up. Although there's like yoga studios every corners in LA, yoga all over the place. But yeah, there's something missing there. So I love what you said about that. And also mentorship. Definitely I have a mentor myself and I see the value as a yoga teacher, and especially somebody who's been teaching for quite a long time, both you and I as a full-time, there's so much value in having a mentor, a teacher who have walked this path before, who have decades of experience under their belt, who's been there, who walked it, and who can kind of like guide us through, whether that's a business side or whether that's your own yoga practice side. So I love that you have a mentor and you're in this, what is it, 2,000-hour program?
Yeah. So I'm in two 1,000-hour programs simultaneously. So I'm continuing with the yoga medicine 1,000-hour, which is do at your own pace. So that's kind of like, not in any rush. And then with Carolyn Weibar, I'm in her 1,000-hour program simultaneously as well. And it's funny because I had talked to another yoga teacher friend about this. And now it feels like all the education I do is coming from a place of abundance. Whereas before it was coming from a place of scarcity. Like I had to get to my 500-hour, of course, like in the Yoga Alliance, if you want to do yoga teacher trainings or whatever, you have to have like your E500 YRT. And so it was almost like a race to that finish line. And then it's like, oh, take your foot off the gas pedal. Like now this is just for you. And that's very cool. It's a cool place to be because now it's also relearning things in the 1,000-hour, for example, like we're doing some things about fascia right now, which is like, oh gosh, if you've studied with yoga medicine, this is like in your sleep, you are hearing about fascia, but it's so cool to learn from many different teachers about similar topics and how it can resonate differently from different voices. And I don't feel like I'm grasping at education. I feel like I'm open to learn now. Now it's like, oh, what a privilege that I have the opportunity to continue to be a student.
I love that. You're open to be able to receive rather than I love that analogy. So I want to know what your typical week look like now that you are living in Laos, teaching both in person and your own virtual business, online business that you have, and whether you have any other streams of income besides teaching yoga.
So I typically teach, I would say I'm teaching right now about 15 classes a week. That's split between in-person and virtual classes. And apart from teaching, I have, regular virtual yoga classes. I'm putting that in quotes. I will say they're individual or semi-private. So it's very based off of what the student needs. So it's not like, an open hatha class or whatever. It's like, okay, this person has an SI joint issue that they're working on. And so it's yoga designed for the needs of the individual. So I have that. And then I have my therapeutic groups, which are different. So that is, we meet once a week. That is over the course of 8 weeks. It includes philosophy, traditional Chinese medicine. It includes yoga practices, and includes 3 individual therapeutic sessions with me. And we do a little bit of everything in those, which are very fun. That has been very fulfilling as well. So those are my income streams are pretty much all from active class or therapy sessions. I am working on currently, I have 2 yoga teacher training offerings. Hopefully I will find some students for those, and a retreat coming up. And I am co-authoring a book as well for yoga for navigating loss and life change based off of yoga philosophy of the koshas. So I'm writing it with another therapist turned yoga teacher turned yoga therapist who she and I have had pretty similar life paths, and we're putting together a book that combines modern psychology with ancient healing practices. So that, again, is not a current income source, but hopefully one day it will be as well.
I love that. It seems like you are now able to really combine all of the stuff you worked on through the life and things that happened to you in your life, like your past work experience, life experience, and your love and passion and all the education you are continuing to grow and learn. You are able to now bring it all together and, work towards this project, these things to actually flourish. So that sounds amazing to hear. And you said you teach about 15 classes a week, and that's both virtual and in person. Do you say it's about half and half?
Yeah, it's about half and half. So yeah, because I teach 7 to 10 in-person classes a week here, and then the rest are virtual.
And I'm curious for maybe other teachers who's listening, who's interested in becoming yoga teachers in different countries. Can you make a living if you only had in-person classes in the country and the town that you live in now? Or do you feel like it's important to have other online teaching or other source of income outside of where you teach physically?
So I think that's very individual. Having lived in Colombia for 9 years and having lived in a different economy, I think my expectations of what my income is and what my necessities have been very different than what it would be if I were living in the US. So, for example, in where I was living in Colombia, you could make $500 a month and live comfortably. Does that make sense? So I think it depends on what your expectations are. And also, if you're carrying a lot of credit card debt or medical debt, that's very important to take care of before you leave the US. If you're, trying to make that change to teach abroad, if you have very high monthly expenses as they are, apart from rent and food, that's something to really think about, because your income is going to be a lot different. Yes, my income for my virtual studio is in US dollars, but what I'm making here is very different. I make $3 per student. And that's what for my in-person classes. But I think of it also as like, I also, am not paying for my house or for, 2 meals a day are covered where I am right now. So it's like, yeah, it's an exchange. So I don't think of, the income I'm receiving from this particular job as being like, I could make a living off of it. It would be pretty difficult. So I think if you do want to make the change, you might want to have a little bit of savings, and maybe like if you want to travel and have fun and, do like a yoga trade year and maybe see what's out there, go for it. Will you come home with savings? No, you will come home with a lifetime of experiences that are super cool, and maybe we'll also like give you some direction on where you feel most at home in this vast world of ours. But I wouldn't say like taking like an eat, pray, love year, which is my original idea, is like the money maker year. So yes, I think to be realistic, if you are moving to a country with a devalued economy or a different economy than the US, you cannot charge US prices for your students. You have to see what local people charge for a yoga class, what is the minimum wage where you are, and what is accessible to people if you're teaching locals. And yeah, so I think there's a lot to think about there.
Yes. And is most of the traveling yoga teachers you have met, do they tend to have other either online yoga teaching stream of income or other source of like online income? Are they doing more than just teaching in person as they travel?
I will say, and I don't want to, I almost like don't even want to say this because it sounds like a little ageist, but I feel like the 30 and above crowd do. I think like the younger students, maybe like in their 20s, maybe are just having like a fun travel year and teaching yoga along the way. Yeah. And I'm sorry if you're listening to this and I am not trying to generalize at all. That's just been my observation.
Yeah. No, I think that was very helpful. I was able to picture in my head what you're trying to say. So looking back at your journey of being a yoga teacher, full-time yoga teachers, what are some key pieces of advice that you wish someone had shared with you earlier in your yoga career?
Let's see. What would I wish that someone had shared with me earlier? I will say what was already shared with me was, saying yes until you can say no. It was very helpful, but also to respect yourself from the beginning. I think that was an Amy problem. That was not a yoga teacher problem, but I think I had felt so devalued in my burnout that I had for so long was like, oh, whatever, I'll, this is seva, I'll do it for free, and yes, seva is an important part of yoga, but are you balancing out what you're giving out and what you're receiving as well? So you have to be able to pay your rent. You have to be able to feed yourself. You should have medical insurance, hopefully. You should take care of yourself. So if your expenditure is higher than, what you're giving in, that's not balanced. And we are trying as yoga teachers to help our students regain balance in their life. So if we are not acting in that way, that's not very fair to them or to us. So to embody yogic values of ahimsa, I'm not going to be acting in violence to myself by speaking poorly down to myself. Like, yes, I do deserve to get paid for this. I do deserve, a livable wage. So I think, yes, I would say do it all, try everything. And also, if you feel like you are being taken advantage of, walk away. There's a lot of other opportunities out there to come from a place. I have really been meditating on the Om Purnamada mantra this past year, which the English translation is all this is full, all that is full. From fullness comes. And when fullness is taken from fullness still remains. So it's this idea of abundance, that if you see another teacher having success, you don't need to look at that other teacher and say, oh no, that means that I can't have success. No, there's abundance. There's room for us all to be successful. There's room for us all to have it all. It's limitless. There's students for every teacher, teachers for every student, and you will find your people. I think all of that to say to not let yourself be taken advantage of. And if you feel like you need to take a break and reorganize, make sure that you have passions outside of yoga. I have seen other yoga teachers burn out because they got into yoga because yoga was so healing to them. But then when they begin teaching 15 to 20 classes a week, it loses something like that was once very precious, becomes work and becomes something almost like that they want to have a break from. So continue to have a little piece that's just for you. Maybe you're teaching, a lot of vinyasa classes and in your private practice, you're doing, you're being guided through yoga nidra, or maybe it's the opposite is true, but you have something that's special and that's yours, and to just keep on with the self-care. It's so important.
Yes, so true. What aspects of being a full-time yoga teacher do you love the most, and what do you find most challenging?
I will say I feel very blessed because I have not had a day in my career where I have felt, oh no, I have to teach yoga today. It has not happened to me. I feel like I'm living my purpose. I feel like this is like my soul's mandate is to share healing. And for me, that has been through yoga, through philosophy, and through mental health practices. So I feel like I'm living my purpose right now. That has definitely been the most fulfilling piece of this. And if you are feeling called to teach, wow, amazing. I'm so proud of you and happy for you. And you will find your students. If you feel like you're meant to be a teacher, it's in you. Also, at the same time, if you feel like you just want to deepen your yoga practice and you don't want to teach, that is 100% valid as well. There's another student in one of my 1,000-hour programs, and he's not a yoga teacher, and he's just on the 1,000-hour educational level because it's so healing for him, but he doesn't feel called to teach it. And that's 100% valid. There's no pressure, if this is just a study as well, an internal study for you, that's totally valid.
Yeah, I love that. I think there aren't many training offered. I feel like that is for people who want to deepen their yoga practice. And a lot of people who just want to deepen, they feel like taking teacher training is the only option for them to deepen their practice.
Yes.
So yeah, I think it's important to have both. And then, some people realize they want to become a teacher later once they start taking these trainings as well. So it goes both ways. But I love to hear that there's a colleague of yours who is in this 1,000-hour training, not to become a teacher, but just because he wants to deepen his practice. And I love that he knows that about himself too. What do you have planned for the future? Like, where do you see your teaching going? You have shared some of your project and things you've been working on, but how do you see, and where do you see your teachings and yourself going in the future?
Yeah. I think this past year, this shift I've made in my personal business to do shorter term therapeutic yoga groups has been really the first step to the path that I want to go down. I think making mental, physical, and spiritual health accessible, and really taking in different frameworks for healing is my next path on this journey. So I'm really excited about these therapeutic groups that I'm offering. They've definitely lit a fire within myself. I feel like it's like, this is my life's work coming to fruition. So this is something I think in the West, we think about mental health care as like, okay, maybe, I need to go to a therapist for a certain amount of time to deal with X issue. And then I finish that treatment, and then what? And then I'm just like back out in the wild on my own. I feel like these type of programs can be so helpful because they could be a step down from maybe something that was more in a more type of intensive mental health care intervention, or it could happen in conjunction with a different type of treatment. Or perhaps maybe I am just looking for an alternative or something that maybe I don't even have access to individual therapy for whatever reason, for where I live, or because there's not someone in my insurance network, or whatever the case may be. But this is something that could offer me tools to apply in my own healthcare. We spoke before this podcast about this idea of being gardeners of our own health, and that's something that has really resonated with me as I've studied traditional Chinese medicine, starting with Tiffany Cruikshank in yoga medicine, is that in modern healthcare, we think of health as being delivered to us, like we're going to the doctor or we're going to your mental health provider, and it's like, deliver me health. Okay, they are a mechanic and you're a car, and they lift up the hood and they move their hands around, but you don't know what they're doing really. Like, you're a passive participant. Whereas traditional practices teach us that we are constantly taking care of our own health. We are gardening and cultivating life all the time. So the more that I can learn to be in charge of my own health or connected to my own health, the more specific I can be when I do need to seek guidance with a healthcare professional. It would be so helpful. And I know, friends that are actively in the medical field right now, when they have a patient who can go to them and really give examples of what their symptomology is, rather than just a general, I just feel like something's off. And these type of practices that allow us to look deep within ourselves and really get to know the inner landscape can be so helpful and really empowering as well. I think, we can hear sometimes a diagnosis that can feel very scary or overwhelming, or what does this mean? And the modern literature maybe it is a little impersonal. It's like, okay, this is again, almost, I am just a statistic in something much bigger. But when we have the space to look at yes, maybe I have a diagnosis of X, but oh my gosh, look at how my symptoms are showing up today. Maybe today's a really good day and the sun is shining, or, oh, maybe I need to learn to put a little bit more, fertilizer in this part of my garden because the flowers are wilting a little bit over there. So all of this to say, I think that these practices can be really, really empowering and helpful for us to take control of our own health.
I love that. Thank you so much, Amy, for sharing your story, your path as being a yoga teacher, and taking time today. Can you share with the listeners how they can find you? What are, any social media, website, or any upcoming offerings that you have?
Absolutely. So you can find me on Instagram at Up Yoga Center with an ER, the US way of spelling. Up Yoga Center is my business, also upyogacenter.com. And my personal Instagram is Up Yoga Amy. And I hope to connect with you all soon. I am offering these 8-week therapeutic groups. You can see the schedule on my website if you're interested in joining. And co-hosting an upcoming retreat here called Fullness for people experiencing burnout, loss, and life changes. That is happening between the 2nd and the 7th of March of this year. And here in Laos. And also 2 yoga teacher trainings, traditional Chinese medicine principles for purposeful class planning, and trauma and grief informed yoga. So hope to see you soon and connect. And again, thank you so much for having me.
Of course, and I'll link all of that on the show notes. Thank you so much, Amy.
I hope you enjoyed our conversation. I I thought Amy's story and journey was so unique and inspiring. To move from United States to Colombia, learn another language, winning a 200-hour teacher training, and eventually moving out to Southeast Asia. And now she is able to combine all of her knowledge and past experiences with her passion to create this amazing offering that she has now. And it seems like she is always learning. She has a mentor and she's been part of 1,000-hour training programs, and everything was so inspiring to hear. I also loved hearing how her virtual yoga studio grew. It was just through word of mouth, and her community became such a big part of her support system through the pandemic. And I think that's so beautiful to see and hear. It also kind of shows that it really matters how we cultivate our community, whether that's with a student you may only see once in your life, or a regular student who comes to your class regularly. You just never know what kind of connection, what kind of experience can lead to another connection or another experience. So her story was very, very inspiring. I hope you got something out of her journey and you also feel inspired to follow your dream, follow your path. I am off to assisting my teacher training for 3 more full days, and I feel like I am definitely following my path, being here in Oakland, assisting my teacher's 200-hour in this moment. I look forward to hearing from you. If you enjoy this podcast, please leave me a review. You are always welcome to message me on Instagram or email me. My Instagram handle is @reikayoga.com. I love hearing from you. I love hearing the takeaway or what you resonated with, what you learned, what inspired you from these podcast episodes. So even if we have never met, or maybe we haven't really spoken before,